first pick in the 2009 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Matthew Stafford.
For 12 years, he gave everything to the Lions.
The playoffs for the first time since 1999.
And for 12 years, it felt like football gave him heartbreak in return.
And Matthew Stafford is down on the field and is not getting up.
In Detroit, he put up video game numbers, shattered franchise records, and played through injuries most quarterbacks wouldn't dare to test. But the wins never followed. Blown leads, playoff losses, seasons that started with hope and ended in disappointment. The narrative grew louder every year. Empty stats, overrated, a quarterback who couldn't win when it mattered most. Then he left. The moment he put on a Rams jersey, everything changed. The same arm, the same toughness, but now the stage was bigger. Super Bowl champion, Super Bowl MVP, and in 2025, the league's most valuable player. What looked like a career defined by frustration became one of the greatest redemption arcs the NFL has ever seen. This is the redemption story of Matthew Stafford. As the son of former high school football coach John Stafford, Matthew dealt with high expectations before he was even old enough to understand what the NFL meant. He spent his early years in Tampa, Florida, as his father coached at the high school level, and that's where coaches and scouts made bold declarations. They watched as a young Matthew threw footballs with incredible velocity before declaring he might be special. Joking or not, it was Stafford's first football evaluation and a sign of big things to come. But the Staffords moved to Dallas, Texas when Matthew was in middle school, and he enrolled at Highland Park High School. And thanks to Matthew's genetics and having grown up around the sport, it didn't take long for those early evaluations to look prophetic. By the time Stafford was a freshman in high school, he had become the starting quarterback. That year on the gridiron, Stafford showed off his unique combination of arm strength and toughness by throwing for impressive yardage and leading his team to victories. As he continued to grow into his body, Stafford also evolved as a leader, breaking high school football norms. He became one of the most recruited quarterbacks in America, and with the added pressure from being the face of Highland Park, Stafford rose to the occasion by throwing for over 8,000 yards and 75 touchdowns across his high school career. That was his national coming out party, as he was named to multiple All-American teams. Top recruiting services, Rivals, ESPN, and Scout all had him ranked as a top quarterback in the nation. Stafford was as well-rounded of a recruit as they come. His high school coach said, "Matthew is the ultimate competitor. He has elite talent and the toughness to match. He's a confident person who wants to win more than anything else." Not only did Stafford shine on the field, but he also excelled off of it. Stafford maintained good grades and was a model student athlete. Colleges across the country were desperate to get his attention. But Stafford wasn't focused on the same thing as most top recruits. It wasn't just about who was the biggest powerhouse program. He wanted a place where he could start immediately and showcase his arm. So with that in mind, Stafford committed to the University of Georgia. As then Georgia head coach Mark Richt put it, "Matthew has all the tools to be special at this level and beyond." But being a quarterback headed to the SEC, Stafford now had all eyes on him, as opposing defenses were determined to knock him down a notch. Nonetheless, he dominated at Georgia by throwing for 7,731 yards and 51 touchdowns across 3 seasons. When he declared for the 2009 NFL Draft, he was full of confidence and ready to turn around a struggling franchise. Except the Detroit Lions were the team that held the #1 pick. In 2008, the Lions had just completed the first 0-16 season in NFL history, and for someone who had always been hailed as elite, it was devastating to be drafted by the worst franchise in professional sports. This motivated Stafford to prove he could turn around any organization. When Stafford was selected first overall in the 2009 draft, the coaches knew they had their franchise savior. They named him the starter immediately. He took over a team that was coming off the only winless season in modern NFL history. So he tried his best, going out and throwing for 2,267 yards and 13 touchdowns as a rookie, despite a separated shoulder that limited him to just 10 games. The next season, injuries derailed everything again. Stafford played just 3 games in 2010, before another shoulder injury ended his season. In the process, he had started his career 2-16 as a starter. He still had his entire career ahead, but Stafford had already dealt with more adversity than most quarterbacks experience in a decade.
However, Stafford stayed healthy for 16 games in 2011, and everything changed. So in other words, he had something to prove. Despite the injuries and losing, Stafford exploded, throwing for 5,038 yards and 41 touchdowns alongside Calvin Johnson. In the process, he was named to the Pro Bowl and led Detroit to a 10-6 record and their first playoff berth since 1999. Stafford completely turned the Lions around as he became one of the league's most exciting young quarterbacks. And with the playoffs finally reached, there was officially hope for Stafford's career. So the Lions faced the Saints in the wildcard round. Heading into the playoffs, Stafford was universally viewed as a rising star. He had the ideal size at 6'3", 220 pounds, to go with a cannon for an arm. Combine those measurables with elite competitiveness and toughness, and you get someone who seemed destined for greatness. Scouts and experts believe Stafford would win multiple playoff games and championships. Fans wanted him to succeed so badly because he played with heart and gave Detroit hope. He was such an elite talent that the Lions believed they finally had their franchise quarterback after decades of futility. And from the moment he broke out in 2011, Detroit saw Stafford as their savior. No quarterback in Detroit's history faced higher expectations to deliver a championship than he did. And this played into people criticizing Stafford after the Lions lost to New Orleans 45-28 in the wild-card round. Despite Stafford throwing for 380 yards, the team couldn't stop Drew Brees. Following the playoff loss, where the Lions' defense collapsed, the narrative started that Stafford was a stat compiler who couldn't win big games. With that noise, Stafford knew he was rapidly approaching do-or-die time. So he went out and continued putting up elite numbers. The game seemed to come naturally for him as Stafford had total control of his offense, and no moment was too big for him. No better example encapsulates this than the countless comebacks throughout his Detroit career. When the Lions needed a score, Stafford delivered time and time again. Not only were these massive moments, but they also proved Stafford had elite talent and toughness. And it was his ability to overcome adversity that defined his Detroit years. Stafford started 136 games over 12 seasons as he led the Lions to 3 playoff appearances. Even though they never won a playoff game, it was incredible that Stafford kept the Lions competitive despite limited help around him. And in the process, he threw for 45,109 yards and 282 touchdowns, becoming Detroit's all-time leader in nearly every passing category. It was an impressive career in Detroit, but there was a massive hole in his resume because he had 0 playoff wins. His 0-3 playoff record haunted him. The writing was on the wall that Stafford needed a change. Until the 2021 offseason changed everything. After finishing 5-11 in 2020, Stafford requested a trade for the first time in his career. He had given Detroit everything for 12 years, but he wanted a chance to win a championship before his career ended. It was announced that Stafford had been traded to the Los Angeles Rams. The deal sent Stafford to LA in exchange for Jared Goff, 2 first-round picks, and a third-round pick. The trade gave him a championship contender for the first time in his career. In his first season with LA, he threw for 4,886 yards and 41 touchdowns. After the regular season, Stafford led the Rams through an incredible playoff run, and in Super Bowl 56, delivered when it mattered most. That year, surrounded by elite talent, Stafford led the Rams to a 23-20 victory over the Cincinnati Bengals. He threw for 283 yards and 3 touchdowns, including the game-winning touchdown to Cooper Kupp with under 2 minutes remaining on his way to becoming a Super Bowl champion. The 2022 season was difficult as injuries hit the Rams hard. Stafford dealt with a spinal cord contusion and elbow issues that limited his effectiveness. The sports world wondered if Stafford's championship window had closed. But Stafford never gave up and returned healthy in 2023. Then in 2024, at age 36, Stafford had another solid season, throwing for 3,762 yards and 20 touchdowns as the Rams went 10-7 again. But the 2025 season was when everything came together. At 37 years old, Stafford put together the best statistical season of his entire career. He threw for 4,707 yards
and 46 touchdowns with just 8 interceptions. His completion percentage was 65%, and he led the Rams to a 12-5 record. The efficiency was remarkable, the decision-making was perfect, and Stafford was playing like an MVP. When the regular season ended, Stafford was named the 2025 NFL MVP. He became one of the oldest quarterbacks ever to win the award. The redemption story was complete. 12 years of heartbreak in Detroit, a Super Bowl championship in his first year with the Rams, and now an MVP at 37 years old, proving he was one of the greatest quarterbacks of his generation. Matthew Stafford will forever be one of the greatest redemption stories in NFL history. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and comment down below.